Folks, the debate and the row over the division of revenue between the two levels of government has reached unprecedented levels. Never have we been in this position before. So, how did we get here, and just what does it take for that law to be passed so that you can understand what all the noise is about, because there's been quite a bit of back and forth over the issue of the county funds row. So, first of all, we'll tell you that there's usually two laws surrounding this. There's the division of revenue, which is essentially dividing the revenue between two levels of government, that's the national and the county governments. And then there's the appropriations bill, which is essentially the bill or the law that gives the counties and the national government the power to spend. So, that being said, let's start where it all begins, with the Constitution, which tells us exactly how this process is supposed to take place. In Article 218, it says that at least 2 months before the end of the financial year, a division of revenue bill, which shall divide revenue, like we said, raised by the national government between the two levels of government. That's the national and the county. It also goes on to say that in Part B, a county allocation of revenue bill, which shall divide among the counties the revenue allocated to the county levels of government. So it's basically just dividing that money between the 47 counties, or rather among the 47 counties. Now, this must also be important to tell you that in Article 203, it actually states exactly how much must go to the counties and how much must remain with the National Assembly. It talks about the amount allocated to counties being not less than 15% of the national revenue collected. And it is usually calculated on the most recent audited accounts that are approved by the National Assembly. Now, bear that in mind, because we'll come back to that and show you why that is also a very significant sticking point. So, as you can see, it starts in the National Assembly. Now, what happens there? The CRA, of course, that's the Commission for Revenue Allocation, makes its recommendations on just how much should go between the two levels of government. It takes that to Treasury and to the National Assembly, where the Budget Committee then tables that division of revenue bill in Parliament. It goes through the usual stages of legislation. The first reading, the second reading where the MPs make their amendments, the committee stage where those amendments are then taken into consideration, then the third reading where the MPs take a vote. After that, the bill plus the minutes are then taken to the Senate. Now, in the Senate, it goes through exactly the same procedure. The first reading, the second reading, the third reading, and the committee stage. Now, if the two agree, that is the National Assembly and the Senate, then that bill goes to State House, where the President assents it into law, and then it is gazetted and therefore is operationalized. However, if the two don't agree, then it doesn't come to the President first. What happens is it goes into what is known as a mediation committee. Now, this mediation panel is formed to negotiate those sticky points between the National Assembly and the Senate. And it's usually made up of 4 members from each house. So 4 members from the National Assembly and 4 members from the Senate. Negotiations, give and take. And then once they're agreed upon, then both houses adopt the bill as is. They don't go back into debating it in the first reading, second reading, because they've already done that, and it's just going to create a lot more confusion. So this mediation panel, for example, for this particular row, had those 4 members, some of them including Mohamed Mahmoud, Ledama Olekina, Susan Kihika, Mutula Jr., and of course from the National Assembly, they were led by MP for Kikuyu, Kimani Ichung'wah, who is the head of the Budget and Appropriations Committee in the National Assembly. So, once they agree on this, then like we said, they do not touch it. Both houses then adopt the negotiated bill as is, and then it goes to the President, who, like we told you, assents it, and then it becomes a law, it is gazetted, and it is operationalized. However, we are way past mediation, because mediation failed, and so did a number of other informal channels. So where are we now with the county funds round? So let's take you back to the process we were telling you about. So 310 billion shillings was the figure that was proposed by the National Assembly together with Treasury. Now recall that this figure is actually less than what was given in the previous financial year by 6 billion. And so this is what got governors a little upset. Why are you giving us less than you did in the previous financial year, considering there's things like inflation and increased operational costs? So when this bill then went to the Senate then put in their figure of 335 billion shillings. And they were basing their figure on the recommendations that were made by the Commission for Revenue Allocation, right? And then we told you about how mediation happened. That mediation process, when it had those 8 members from both the National Assembly and the Senate, then couldn't agree. So they tried to have the horse trading, the negotiating back and forth. What did they settle on? The Senate came down from 335 to 327, and the National Assembly went up a little bit to 316. So basically they couldn't agree on 11 billion shillings. So after that, the time lapsed, and therefore the Division of Revenue bill itself collapsed and could not take place. So they went into informal channels. In fact, the president got involved. If you remember, the deputy president also tweeted it, saying that following negotiations that had been authorized by the president, they had come up with this new figure of 316.5 billion. So then what happened was the National Assembly then republished the bill in National Assembly with this new figure. And this was the justification. They told county governments and the Senate that, listen, this is way above the 15% that is required by the Constitution. It is in fact 30.5% of the approved latest accounts. Governors have rejected this. Why? Because they say, come on, this figure being 30.5% of which accounts for 2014-2015 financial year. That's 4 financial years ago. So much has changed. The economy has grown, revenue and budget has increased, there's inflation, there's increased cost of operations. So the governors got upset. They went to court in what we have seen, and they're seeking an advisory from them. And amongst them, they're questioning the role of CRA and whether their recommendation is indeed just a suggestion or a recommendation, or whether it is binding. Another thing that happened this week, the Senate then went ahead and tabled their own Division of Revenue bill, giving this figure of 335 billion. In fact, just this afternoon, they were debating just this bill. Problem with that is ordinarily this bill would originate in the National Assembly. Now, the question you'd ask is, so what are counties doing now? Do they have money? Has money been released? It's about 18 days into the new financial year. Well, this is what the law says in Article 222. It allows only the national government, well, at least that's what it states, to access 50% from the consolidated fund in the event of a dispute. Now, it remains silent on the issue of counties, which is where the problem is. And remember also, the president at this point has been faulted for signing the appropriations bill, which we told you is the authorization to spend, when the issue of division of revenue between the 2 levels of government is still in dispute. And that is that fake letter or leaked letter we're yet to find out, depending on the DCI's probe. So are county governments receiving money? We understand they may be receiving some money, but it's only, of course, for operational costs and paying salaries in some cases. But they basically remain cash-strapped until this issue is finally sorted out. So that's how we got here, and that's how ideally it should work. So even in all the noise, hopefully this process is now a little clearer to you.